Good morning. I'm Reverend Linda Susan Ulrich, the minister here at the Unitarian Society of New Haven, and it's my honor to welcome you today to this service in honor of June Schafer. Whether you're joining us here at home or here in this sanctuary, thank you to each of you for your presence. Before we begin, just a quick note that if you have a device that makes sounds on its own volition, this would be a good time to silence it ever so gently. And also that while the people at the podium who are speaking will remove our masks while we're here, we ask that everyone else stay masked the entire time for the safety of everyone. We gather this morning as one community bound together by loss and united by gratitude to be among those whose lives June touched. We'll begin with June's friend Linda Pollock lighting the chalice. The cup of community holds the life-affirming fire that shines within, among, and beyond us all. It is a symbol of hope that unites Unitarian Universalists across space and time, however difficult a given moment might be. At every memorial service, I make a practice of sharing some important information about grief. First, there's no single way to grieve. It may show up as sadness, anger, regret, despair, or perhaps all of these at once. It doesn't follow a tidy pattern. We may get overtaken by tears or shut down by numbness. We may find ourselves wanting to share a story, then remember with shock that our loved one is gone. Grief ebbs and flows, and each of us must find our way through. The task of grief is paradoxical: to hold on to the legacy that has been gifted to us, and at the same time to honor the full depth of what we've lost. The hand that cups gently is the same as the hand that releases. We also need to know that when we lose someone we love, it brings back every other loss we've suffered, like the wires inside a piano vibrating in response to a bass drum. Though each of us needs time to grieve alone, we also need to return to our communities of friends and family. However beautiful a single voice may be, it's the harmonies we make together that swell the heart. Today we gather our voices to strengthen each other in our grief, to hold this family and this community in the midst of loss, and to be reminded that life is indeed a fragile gift. I invite you now into a moment of meditation, prayer, or contemplation of ultimate things. Spirit of love and compassion, come. Be with us as we celebrate the life of June Schafer. Hold in your tender embrace those who have gathered here today, physically or virtually, as well as those who could not be present. Offer them comfort and protect the spark of hope that in its own time will once again burn brightly. Blessed be.
I'm Sharon McLean. June and I had fun. We laughed, we strategized, and we shared a deep love of children. Thanks, Margaret. For 25 years, we enjoyed developing close relationships with the Waverly children and their families. I'm so grateful June left us these words she wrote in February 1988, almost 34 years ago. Once a year, in place of the sermon, a USNHer was offered the opportunity to share their story in answer to the question, why I am a Unitarian. This was June's answer. I come from a long line of strong pioneer women who went out to Kansas in covered wagons with their men to help settle the land. When anything had to be done, there was nobody there to do it except the family. Out there, it was not unusual for a pioneer man to wear out 3 women. But in my family, the women were survivors with strong immune systems and good teeth. My great-grandmother, on my mother's side, had 11 children, and she claimed that great-grandpa never saw above her knee. My grandmother helped them build the dugout they lived in, digging rooms in the ground with sod for roof. It was cool in the summertime, warm in the winter, and safe from tornadoes. But you had to share with the other little ground animals, and you could get covered up by sudden blizzards. Experiences like that taught self-reliance, which was passed down to the children. I was born at a later time after my great-grandmother's children had built houses and started businesses. I was born in the Great Depression. My grandmother's children had come together to live with her on the edge of town. She had a cow, chickens, and a large garden. Her 8 surviving brothers and sisters and their families lived close by. We all worked together and pooled our resources. My grandmother never turned anyone away from the supper table. Anyone who dropped in was always invited to pull up a chair. And strangers who came to the back door asking for food were always given some homemade bread, a fried egg, and a glass of Old Betsy's milk. And I learned sharing with others. We were Baptists in my family. Eventually, there were about 30 of us, counting second cousins who belonged to the West Side Baptist Church in Wichita. And so the church was kind of an extension of my family. We went to church Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday prayer meeting, and Thursday choir practice. My grandmother, all her children and grandchildren, and some of her brothers and sisters and their families sang in the choir. We were Northern Baptists, not Southern Baptists, and proud of it. We were religious liberals, and we didn't show our emotions much in church. But we believed, once saved, always saved. We moved to a small town where my father became a high school teacher. He was also the choir director, and my mother taught in the Sunday school, in a different kind of church, a community church, where we not only had Protestants who were not Baptists, we even had a Catholic who had gotten special permission to attend. I learned that people could express different ideas in a community church. When I was in junior high school, we moved to a larger town, and for the first time in my life, I experienced indoor plumbing. For a young Kansas farm girl, that's almost a religious experience in itself. Might make you believe in miracles. My brother Stanley was born. My mother was very ill, and Stanley became my responsibility, evenings and weekends. I washed his diapers by hand, But now we had hot and cold running water, and I didn't have to pump any water or heat it on the stove. So it was not that hard. I loved Stanley very much, and he became a very important part of my life. At 14, I moved to Wichita, and there was David, sitting on the organ bench in the West Side Baptist Church, where my father was again choir director. David was translating an Arabic grammar from German to English, and he played beautiful music. It was not enough that I valued his intelligence and musicianship. I also had to get his attention. So I asked him to help me with Latin and algebra, and after I learned to recite the Greek alphabet, we became friends. In fact, we became a team. We found we had many values in common. When we were both 16, I was a senior in high school and David was a senior in college. And we began to feel that the teachings of Jesus we had heard in the West Side Baptist Church were not what we were seeing lived out in people's lives. In particular, it seemed that when it came to the matter of race, everybody in the church was white Anglo-Saxon. In the small Quaker college David was attending, he had black friends and friends from other countries. It was 1946. The Supreme Court had said that black people did not have to ride Jim Crow in interstate buses. The Wichita YMCA would not serve food to blacks, and they certainly couldn't use the swimming pool. It seemed to us that black people should have equality. We organized a chapter of the Nonviolent Congress of Racial Equality with help from Bayard Rustin, who 16 years later organized the March on Washington. We began sit-ins, boycotts, and petitions. We did make some small differences. We got one black man hired in a grocery store in a black neighborhood. We also became a target for people in the community who felt we were dangerous. I first heard of Unitarians at this time. In our sit-ins and in our protest, Unitarians joined us, and a Unitarian lawyer offered his services. David and I married at 18 and moved to Minnesota. He was in graduate school, and I in college. In college, I began to see the Christian church as an exclusive group peculiar to Western culture. Christianity no longer seemed like the only truth. I began to think of God as the natural forces in the universe. I was still not sure if I was doing the right thing. Then something happened. When I was 20, on Good Friday, my little brother Stanley got a sore throat. David and I took the bus from Minneapolis to Wichita for Easter vacation. By the time we got there on Monday, Stanley had died of interstitial pneumonia. Stanley's sudden death was a terrible shock. My Baptist friends tried to console me by telling me it was God's plan, that God needs baby roses for his garden. And it made me extremely angry. Now my Unitarian friends helped me to face my grief realistically. They reminded me that we all live and we all die. If a virus is so virulent that you can't survive it, that's all part of life. And they said, "We are very sorry. Let us help you with your grief." In the end, the Unitarian way of looking at Stan's death was much more comforting to me. I became a Unitarian. After several active years in the Minneapolis Unitarian Society, we moved to New York City. Being a trained teacher, I became the lay religious education director for the Yonkers Unitarian Church. I developed a 2-hour religious education program for Sunday mornings from 10 to 12, and David started a 10 o'clock forum. Early in 1963, David and I decided that we wanted to help with world problems and work in a third world country. He applied to teach physiology and biophysics and do research in India. That August, on the day he was in the March on Washington, listening to Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, we received a telegram saying he was assigned to Calcutta. In a way, I was prepared for what I saw in Calcutta, yet I felt such compassion for the people that were living in the street that I began to feel it was very difficult. We stepped over dead bodies. We saw newborn babies trying to cling to life. We saw people who really looked like walking illustrations of various disorders in a medical textbook. I told David that I just didn't think I would be able to stay in India. And he looked at me and said, "Do you think if you go home, these people won't be here?" And I decided that in Jesus' words, "The poor ye have always with you," and I had to do the best that I could to help them. I had to find problems that my children and I would be able to do something about. So I chose to care for the people living on the sidewalk on my street, and we began to get food and clothing for them. There was a little tailor there who had leprosy, and he didn't have his fingers or his toes, but he spoke beautiful English. He had left his family so he wouldn't give them leprosy. He was able to tell us where to get things and how to organize to help the people that were there on the street. He introduced us to the others so that we could become part of each other's lives. I also helped organize an American international school, 1st through 8th grade, that would include Indian children and children from the international community. We obtained financial support from the State Department to continue this school after I left. In Calcutta, we were in riots. A boy was killed in our driveway. We were shot at. Soldiers were billeted in David's laboratory at Calcutta University. We were in a bombing raid. It was becoming too difficult for our family to stay in Calcutta. David was offered a job to develop a physiology department in the new medical school in Thailand. So we packed up the family, took 6 of David's Indian students, and went to Bangkok. Altogether, we spent 4 years in Asia. We may have contributed a little to world understanding, but we received far more than we gave. Living overseas, we developed a broader perspective of the world and really learned to appreciate how all people are one family. Back in the States, I raised 2 children and 2 of David's students, whom we had brought back from India. I took graduate studies in special education because I believed as a Unitarian, now a Unitarian Universalist, in the inherent value of every individual. I became a teacher of multiply handicapped children. Over the years, I taught children who were autistic, cerebral palsied, profoundly retarded, and terminally ill. I always continued teaching in Unitarian Universalist Sunday schools. Usually this was a contrast, but not always. When we came to Connecticut, I was religious education director and LRY advisor to this church for 6.5 years. I started the senior high school class and worked to have the youth as an integral part of this church. They had a representative on the board of trustees and the RE committee and worked on many social responsibility projects. We had overnights almost every month where we invited youth from other churches in the district and they invited us. We organized district conferences, I slept on the floor of most Unitarian Universalist churches in our district. Our children are wonderful, important, and deserving of all the attention we give them. It has been especially satisfying for me to see these children grow into caring and thoughtful people. I am presently working in a high school with youth who have serious problems: violent, acting out teenage boys, girls who have been abused or have problems with pregnancy, youngsters with various learning disabilities. My commitment to the principles of Unitarian Universalism helps me to carry out my daily work. My great-grandmother and my grandmother never thought they were raising me to become a Unitarian, but in several ways they were. From the beginning, they taught me that we human beings have to be self-reliant, that women can be strong and equal to men, that we must share what we have with others, even strangers, that the warmth of family and the beauty of music are as essential to me as food and shelter, and that the church is an extended family where the important events of our lives take place. These values helped me to be receptive to Unitarian Universalism from the very beginning. But these values, after all, were compatible with my Baptist upbringing. The reason I am a Unitarian today and not a Baptist is that over the years my thinking has changed in two important ways. First, through personal experiences and education, I have gradually come to understand life, death, and God in naturalistic terms, which my grandmother would never have seriously considered. And second, by working with persons of other races, cultures, and philosophies, and people with severe disabilities, I have come to have a much broader view of religion than I could ever have had as a Baptist. I have moved toward a religion that is inclusive, not exclusive. I have chosen a religion that looks to the future and not merely the past. And that's the story of one Unitarian Universalist who started life as a girl from the Midwest, where the women are strong, the men are good looking, and all the children are above average.
Hello, I'm Margaret Schafer. I'm June Schafer's favorite daughter. I want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank everyone who worked hard to make this happen. My mother was the kindest, most empathetic person I have ever known, and I loved her with all my heart. And she could make me laugh with just a look. When we moved from country to country and state to state for my father's work, my mom was a constant source of love, comfort, and care for me and my older brother, Martin. Although Martin did say when I was born, "The baby's nice, but she should have brought her own mother." Some of my fondest memories are of sitting in the kitchen talking with my mom. She had a special gift for understanding people. Growing up and throughout my life, she would explain people to me and help me understand why people do the things they do. One of her favorite expressions was, "It takes all kinds to make a world." And sometimes this would be followed up with, "Oh, Margaret, all the world is strange save thee and me." And then she would squint at me. "And sometimes methinks even thee a little strange." I have more wonderful memories of my mom singing in the kitchen. We did have other rooms in the house, but I remember the kitchen. She had a beautiful soprano voice. And at the risk of being a little strange, I wanted to include this ridiculous song my mother loved to sing. She was Adu Annie in her high school production of Oklahoma. And some people might say that was typecasting, but her boy craziness was centered on one remarkable boy named David Schafer. Born in the same hospital, 5 days apart, she looked at the next crib and said, "Blue booties, that's for me." Thinking of my mom singing this song will always bring a smile to my face. I miss her very much.
It's my great honor this morning to read a letter written by a longtime family friend, Ajit Thakur. Before I do, just on a quick personal note, I just wanted to say, June, I love you. I miss you, and I am so eternally grateful for all of the paths that you blazed, not the least of which was preparing the way for me in my own work here at USNH by being such a wonderful LRY director and religious education director. Sometimes this job can feel like wading through snow, and every once in a while I realize that I'm not actually wading through fresh snow. I'm walking in June Schafer's footsteps. A.G. Thakur's letter. And forgive me if there's some bad pronunciation. It's been about 25 years since I've read any Sanskrit out loud. As introduction, let me recite an invocation hymn called the Pavamana Mantra, soul purification hymn from the Birhardhanaka Upanishad, part of the Shukla Yajurveda. Om Masato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jiterjamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, which in English would be something like, Om, guide me from dishonesty to honesty, from eternal darkness, guide me to divine light, from death, guide me to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. June's husband, David Schafer, was a visiting professor and a Johns Hopkins Research Foundation scholar at Calcutta University over 50 years ago. I was one of David's postgraduate students. They lived in a flat near Hedua Park, Calcutta, where the Scottish Church College, now university, rented places for foreign faculty. One evening, David invited a couple of us for dinner at his place. I first met June and their two children, son Martin and daughter Margaret, the first time that evening. June treated me like I was a younger brother. She was fresh in a foreign country, meeting students from different cultures, yet embraced us as members of their own extended family. They were celebrating India's Independence Day with fireworks at the little lake in the park. Margaret whispered something in June's ears, and June said that Margaret told her they must be celebrating her birthday with those fireworks. We ate dinner and talked about Wichita, Kansas, where they came from, among many other things. Now, it was many years later. We were in Minneapolis. It was Thanksgiving morning, and it had snowed all night and was still doing so. David picked me up from the campus area, and we drove on I-35W towards their home in Richfield, a suburb of Minneapolis. There was about 18 inches of snow on the ground, and it was still piling up. We almost got blown away from the road, but eventually made it to their home in their Volkswagen Beetle. After a big turkey dinner, we started chatting. There was a fire, and David and June started singing songs by Tom Lehrer, Mitch Miller, Pete Seeger, and the likes. We all joined at the refrain, and their dog, Flawn, would join us with a roar every time we sang the refrain, "Oh, the Erie was rising." Eventually, we all fell asleep by the fireside. Now, the next morning, June woke us up saying, "Come on and eat some breakfast." I did not realize that in the middle of the night she had covered us with blankets so that we would be warm. That was so June. They moved to Hamden, Connecticut. I finally finished my PhD under a different advisor. June would write and ask how everything was going. As many of you know, June used to teach intellectually challenged children. She talked about them with loving care and kindness. She used to often feed them and take them on trips. Together, we had been to Bangkok, Thailand, Eris, Sicily, among other places. We used to get together for Thanksgiving, either in Hamden or in Washington, D.C. They used to rent a cottage in Cape Cod, and we would join them there. Our children were small, but they were always looking forward to being with Aunt June every year. Those were the good old days. June would never miss our two children's birthdays and send them a card with a $20 bill tucked inside for each of them. For them, their Aunt June is still in their memory. June was a loving wife to David, mother to Martin and Margaret, aunt to our children, and a friend to Yoko, my wife, and me. We miss her very much, and may her soul rest in peace.
Hello, I am Ruth Slater, one of June Schafer's favorite daughter-in-laws. I am reading for Beatty Seacar. Hi, Beatty. She's part of the Schafer family for many years, and she asked me to share these memories, and I am honored to do so. I first met Mrs. Schafer in 1964 in Calcutta, when Dr. Schafer came to work at the School of Tropical Medicine and needed a few research scholars. As Dr. Schafer changed jobs, I tagged along, first to Bangkok and then to Minneapolis. In Minneapolis, I had ample time to know the Schafer family. I, being a foreign student at the University of Minnesota, not knowing the culture or even the language properly, was completely at a loss. Mrs. Schafer took me in, most affectionately, as a family member, inviting me to their home for every little occasion, serving good food, having conversations, and making me feel most comfortable. I am forever grateful for that. However, what really fascinated and intrigued me most about her was when I visited the school where she was teaching. It was a school for physically handicapped children, mostly suffering from spina bifida. They had problems in walking, talking, and learning. I was so taken aback seeing these children. The children were so happy to see her. They all greeted her with great smiles. When she introduced me to them, they all echoed, "Good morning," gleefully. Maybe not audibly, but with great sincerity. Mrs. Schafer took time to go to each child with great care and love, teaching them little things like a rhyme or a song, and did so effortlessly. It was no doubt a strenuous job, but on the way back, she never complained about that. She only said in a sad tone, "You know, Beatty, those children probably will never get cured or may even die soon." I think one has to have a special ability to be able to help those kids, which does not come from training only, but from a special mental makeup, a very sensitive and sympathetic heart. That was 50 years ago, back around 1970, but I shall never forget that day as long as I live. And I would like to echo Beatty's words. I was literally welcomed to the Schafer family almost 30 years ago, and June always made sure that I was part of the family gatherings, celebrations, and holidays, except, of course, when she and David were off serving food or otherwise helping others. June was a caretaker. She always advocated for the less fortunate, whether they were people she knew or those she made it her business to get to know. She did not stand idly by and just watch her talk. She provided services, a listening ear, and respect. Everywhere she went, she made things happen, and people's lives were better for it. I was also lucky enough to witness the relationship between June and Margaret. Phone calls, visits, shared memories, the closeness born of being best friends on multiple continents, and in some pretty unusual situations. They always had each other's back, and I'm very thankful that she passed the trait of compassion on to her daughter. I have seen in Margaret the same willingness to help others and to be a rock for those in need. I don't think that's a coincidence. I believe June would be very proud to know of her spirit of not just caring, but doing. Lives on. I also know how much she is missed. And I'd also like to point out, as I introduce the next bit of this, that the music that we are going to hear next was also played at June's mother's service. She made a list of the things that June wanted to also have at her service, and next to the meditation from Thais, she put a little asterisk and said, "If it's not too much trouble." So I would like to thank both Mickey Koth and William Braun for making it their trouble to do. Thank you so much. Thank you for making me cry.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tanisha Drummond, and I am one of Miss June's favorite grandchildren. Okay. Miss June has known me since I was 16 years old. I will be 45 in a month. She has always been such a passionate woman. I'm telling you, she loved her kids all so much. I've known so much about you without even knowing you for so many years, Margaret. It was just an amazing journey with her. She took us places that in the inner city we could never imagine going. I remember just being at the Million Children March in Washington, D.C. that, Miss June helped organize as a young person. And the struggle of hoping that we as inner city kids will keep it together out there and, not get into trouble. But Miss June had faith in us, so we had faith in ourselves. I remember just coming in to USNH, and as all you can smell the fragrance of the pigs in the blanket. The smell just, it hypnotized us coming in. We already knew Miss June had this Wednesday to cook. Thanksgiving celebrations was a big hit for us here at USNH as well. Miss June will definitely make sure that we had turkey, dressing, we had macaroni and cheese, but the most important thing to have was the sweet potato pie. Miss June made sure that Stop and Shop had a nice little order of sweet potato pies in the back for her when she arrived to get them for us. I'm telling you, man, she is definitely missed. The conversations over the years that we had about her journey and the journey of her and David's love, the love. I'm telling you, man, I looked forward to that love. I'm still looking forward to that love. I'm not going to count it out in my older years. But the love for her and David, it's remarkable. It's so sincere. And, just me seeing them say, I love you, honey bunny. I love you, baby. And, just the passion. It was everything for me. It was always a good look. The kids, Waverly kids were definitely her thing. She loved us. It started off as the grandchildren, down to the great-grandchildren, now down to the great-great-grandchildren. My niece Lyric, now my foster daughter, she used to love coming with me to go pick up David and June on a Wednesday to go to dialysis in the evening. She'll sit in the back seat nice and quiet, and she sees David and June enter the car, and she'll say, hi, great-grandma June, hi, Grandpa David. And it just lit Miss June up. Just knowing that she worked with inner city kids in New York City, it was a big thing for me. So I knew she could handle the kids at Waverly. They were tough, but not tougher than Miss June. Not at all. She was definitely someone that they respected. They would never go toe-to-toe with her. Everything she said was, yes, ma'am, yes, Miss June. And it was great. It was good. I didn't have to take them outside and yell at them. They already knew. They were on cue with Miss June because they knew she was sincere, she was on point, and she loved them just as much as they loved her. So I'm representing all of the Waverly kids today just to let you guys know that she will definitely be missed, and we love her, and we will always honor her. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Janet York, a former member of here, and became friends with June when they moved to Hamden and started attending this church. We did a lot of RE things together, But my reading is one of the things that she wrote on the program of her mother's service, that if it's not too much trouble, would somebody read this? So here I am. Do not come when I am dead to sit beside a low green mound, or bring the first gay daffodils, because I love them so. For I shall not be there. You cannot find me there. I will look up at you from the eyes of little children. I will bend to meet you in the swaying boughs of bud-thrilled trees, and caress you with the passionate sweep of storm-filled winds. I will give you strength in your upward tread of everlasting hills. I will cool your tired body in the flow of the limpid river. I will warm your work-glorified hands through the glow of winter fire. I will soothe you into forgetfulness to the drop of the rain on the roof. I will speak to you out of the rhymes of the masters. I will dance with you in the lilt of the violin and make your heart leap with the bursting cadence of the organ. I will flood your soul with the flaming radiance of the sunrise and bring you peace in the tender rose and gold of the after sunset. All of these things have made me happy. They are a part of me, and I shall become a part of them.
Before we close, I wanted to invite one more person to speak. Patsy Rembert, please welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patsy Rembert. I'm Wimper's wife. June took us in as if we were kids. She looked after us. She gave money. She gave us food, clothes. But most of all, she gave us her love and her understanding. She will be truly missed by me, my family. She used to tease me. She said, "You got your own group." I say, "Yes, ma'am." But she was somebody that you could talk to. She was somebody who could connect you with other people who could help you. She just had a helping hand, and I loved her. I loved her and her husband, because they worked as a team. I don't think she could have done what she did if he hadn't agreed. Coming from a marriage situation, I know how that works. It takes two. And both parties have to be agreeable. And I want to thank him as well. But I just had to say something in remembrance of her. And I pray in my heart that her legacy, her deeds will live on. Thank you.
As we draw to a close, I wanted to invite everyone to enjoy some of the Waverly kind of snacks on your way out in very festive yellow bags. And if you hadn't had a chance to sign the guest book, please feel most welcome to do that. I invite you now to join me in the words in the order of service that we use to extinguish the chalice. Together, let us say, "We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again." We have indeed been blessed by the life of June Schafer. Everyone in this room has been touched by her life, by her love, by her warmth, by her commitment, by her actions. What a beautiful legacy she leaves us. I feel warmed. I never had the privilege of meeting her, and yet I, too, have been touched by her life today. May all of us live with that kind of commitment and love and kindness and warmth and hope. Let us be the blessing that carries on in her name. Amen.